I feel the need to talk about this. And the reason is, first of all, it's a very difficult topic. So I'm going to be addressing the topic of suicide. And the reason that I feel I need to share this is because just in the past day or so, I've seen a few posts regarding this topic, including one where the person discussed, needing a brain transplant for people who have been longtime sufferers on suicide watch for years. And I just want to dispel the myth and let people understand that it's we do know a solution. It's just that mainstream doesn't know the solution. Mainstream hasn't adopted the solution because right now mainstream, pharmaceutical companies, doctors being giving incentives by pharmaceutical companies, it's a corruption in the system because of money. Because money was taking precedence. So the solution has not come into the mainstream because that would interfere with the profits. Okay? I'm not saying that every doctor or psychiatrist or counselor is in it for the money at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying widespread as an issue, this is why it's been kept suppressed. So this is why I'm telling you and not your newscaster or the local doctor or the psychiatrist you've been seeing every day for 8 years. They may not know, okay? I was suicidal. I believe that I was 15 the first time I had a suicide attempt. And I stayed in that feeling of wanting to die for, I think, right up until I was 40 years old. I was still looping that trauma. Now, for me in particular, I have a father who completed suicide. And I was a witness to that. Now, if you've been following my stuff, what I'm talking about and sharing, it's that we get traumatized and the energy gets stuck in us, if we can't process it fully. So for me, witnessing that suicide was a trauma for me. I was 9 years old when it happened. And that energy looped in me and became part of my experience. So not only did I experience suicidal ideation, but I also experienced it from others. I experienced a range, but I believe I counted 6 or 7 people who attempted suicide in my presence, like literally either on the phone with me or right in front of me, throughout my life before the time that I cleared up this energy. When I cleared up the energy, I did it by getting myself out of trauma. So I can tell you no brain transplant is needed. We can heal. We can heal ourselves. And what needs to happen is this person who's suffering with the want to die is suffering with a lack of love, a lack of self-love, a lack of connection and understanding, a lack of compassion. There are certain family relating dynamics that allow this to happen. Okay? It's something that we're evolving through. So when I explain it, it may be uncomfortable if your family copes like this. So you may not want to hear it. You may want to have another explanation, like, someone needing a brain transplant. It's nothing to do with brain transplants. It's nothing to do with medications. It's to do with honoring and processing and integrating the energy that's looping in the experience still. So when we have a person that's been traumatized and nobody is able to take the time to sit with that person and understand their point of view, you don't have to agree with it, but to understand it, to get down where they're at and let them know that you're listening and that you care and that you understand. Now, a lot of people can do this, but as soon as they start hearing the discomfort, they just start telling the person what to do and how to handle it and how they can do it different and how they just have to not give up and not try. And I mean, and keep trying and all this stuff. And it's like, it then becomes about the person instead of the person who's suffering. It's now turned into this person who wants to change the situation, trying to change the situation. It's a manipulative and forceful energy. So that will never heal somebody. When you come to a place where you can understand somebody, you're acknowledging their pain. Usually these people have not been given an opportunity or permission to acknowledge their pain. And it's through the beliefs that they adopt, through life and the experience they've had in the home that they've grown up in. So there are various reasons why somebody would not feel seen and heard and understood, or even able to get any of that from a family dynamic. I've talked about before how we're recovering from a family dynamic where things are hush-hush and pushed under the carpet. So something happens in the family that's shameful, and then nobody wants to talk about it. It's pushed under the carpet. This has happened a lot in my family. I can think of certain things that have happened over the years that I've observed that it's like that happened, and then like, hush hush, don't tell everybody. And these are things like sexual abuse, being pushed under the carpet and not dealt with, and so the victim is not honored, and the person who offends is not even held accountable, really, and not actually perhaps put in another position to abuse again. So when we have families that start brushing things under the carpet, it puts us in a position where we can't be understood or honored, and even if we are understood, we can't be validated. These are two first steps that have to be done to heal. So in certain families, when things are deemed not okay to feel, and they're brushed under the carpet kind of topics, those things still happen. And what ends up happening is one person in the family becomes, there are different ways to call it, but you could call it the black sheep, the designated patient. It's the person who is now pointed at as the holder of the wound, the one suffering from that. As we all look at that and go, that person's suffering from that, and when we don't take it upon ourselves, not ever realizing that what we see in another is actually existing in us, and that we're actually putting the burden on that person of holding that energy pattern for us, while we won't look at it within ourselves. Now, our looking at it in ourselves, say we're looking at somebody who's suffering with suicidal ideation. How do we feel about that? Are you frustrated? Are you annoyed? Are you not understanding it? Are you sympathetic? Are you empathetic? Do you totally get it? Do you feel hopeless for them? All of those things are feelings in us. If we have healed those things within us, when we look at the person who's suffering, we would see compassion and not all those other things. Those things are all denser feelings that you're presented with an opportunity to heal at that point. But what happens is this person, the black sheep of the family, all the family members end up putting the burden on that person, and that person becomes weakened. And it's hard for that person to get up. It's hard for that person to live. Because we may not realize it, but everything's energy. Every thought you have, every gossip you do, every feeling, it's all energy. So when you have an entire family group putting their burden of how they feel, and they're not willing to feel because it's not acceptable to feel that way, on the same person, now you've amplified the pain of this person. Now, it's amplified. It's still their pain, and yours is yours, but you're suppressing or denying yours to find a placeholder for it, which is a normal thing that we humans do. Without knowing this is how it works, you wouldn't know that that's happening. You wouldn't know that there's energy attached to what you're thinking about another person. And so, the burden of getting up when you have an entire family around you putting their projection onto you, It's hard. It makes it very hard, and it can go on for years and years and years. It's kind of like the scapegoat. You become the scapegoat for the family's darkness that they're not willing to hold into themselves. So if somebody could have sat with, understood, acknowledged, and validated how the person feels before they tell them what to do, before they tell them how to act different, before they tell them what tool to use, acknowledge and validate, acknowledge and validate, acknowledge and validate. I can't even say it enough, because if one person had been able to do that for me, I would not have suffered for that many years. Okay, so I just described about a 25-year period where I suffered with suicidal ideation most every day. I would say every day. Because even though it wouldn't be the looming over my head every moment in the later years, like towards maybe like 35 to 40, the last 5 years, were more like if anything happened. But it could have been anything. Anything happened. I could go into that. So I started to try to manage my life by controlling it and try to get back out there in life by trying to control too many factors to keep myself from feeling that. And I luckily found acknowledgement and acceptance and validation for my own self. I was forced to survive. It was the only way. And there was no, understanding from others. I had to understand myself. But if we want to help people who are suffering with suicidal ideation, we need to acknowledge and validate without trying to fix. Make it okay for them to feel what they feel. That's all. That's it. That's it. And it's all okay to feel. We don't have to act in how we feel. The reasons we are acting in how we feel without any time between our response and what's activating us is because it's a looping energy that's stuck in our aura, our energy body, and we have an immune system that wants to alert us to it. So it's going to keep coming up. It's going to keep coming up. Any opportunity for it to be poked in us will make it play out. The response will automatically play out, whether it is a resistance and frustration to somebody in suffering, or whether it is acting as though it's the end of the world when something happens. These are real, valid ways to feel, all of them. Even the person holding frustration for the person suffering, it's a valid way to feel. So, once we acknowledge and validate these ways to feel, we become free of the energy. Our immune system is just trying to get our attention. It gets louder and louder and louder. Eventually, this will manifest as a physical ailment, So, it's disturbing to me when I see people talking about long-time sufferers of suicidal ideation in terms of saying, well, it was inevitable, it was just a matter of time. That may be the case on a soul level, that this person agreed to come and try to shift something by letting this happen in the lives of others. For instance, 2 family members that have passed on due to suicide completion in my family have certainly given me information and understanding that allows me to untangle my own and allows me to see the bigger picture and allows me to see a pattern. It allows me to understand why it's happening. Because I look at the way that my family has been relating with a lot of these things not being allowed. We're not allowed to feel certain things, especially anger. Like I didn't even let myself consciously or allow myself to feel anger up till age 40. Because I was wanting to please everyone, and I had decided early on that being angry was bad. Because the people that I had witnessed being angry were acting really bad. And causing a lot of damage acting out in it. So I had decided, I don't want to be bad, so I'm not going to be angry. But what happened was, I had valid anger inside me, looping inside me. And the only time it could come out was when I was poked. We'll call it trigger or activate. That energy was activated in me, causing my immune system to play it out for me. I'm sure it was very scary for anyone else. I was dissociated from it, so I could only witness it too. I couldn't even stop it at that point because I had deemed myself powerless. because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know that it was energy looping. I didn't know how to make these triggers stop, because as far as I was concerned, every counselor that I had been to for more than 15 years, where, in talk therapy, none of them had even acknowledged the ability to cure and heal PTSD. And that's what it is. It's a PTSD reaction. Humans are made up of a bunch of PTSD reactions. The reason it's not generally called PTSD is because it's just so subtle. It's just like how we were programmed, We're always looping energies when we need to recognize them. The human brain recognizes patterns. So it's by design, But untangling this and knowing that we can heal these traumas, releases us from looping these. And as we release these loops, we see life more clearly. We see ourselves more clearly, we see others more clearly. And if somebody else has the issue that we healed from, then we have compassion for them automatically, because we've healed it in ourselves. We understand where it came from, we understand why, and we don't hold a judgment for another person who has done that, and we're not putting any of our judgment on another person. So we no longer have to project on that person, because we understand. Understand is love, understand is compassion, and love really does solve it, Taking the time to acknowledge and validate somebody is how you love them. You understand them. That understanding is love. So when something happens and we refuse to understand how someone feels, and we want to push it under the carpet, that person is now invalidated, and they are literally stuck in the loop. So if every person around that person is unable to validate them, they'll stay in that loop. Unless they know this is what's happening, unless they have the strength and understanding and the skills or tools to get themselves out, they won't know that that's a possibility. Okay, so just want to raise some awareness about this. And I'm not trying to blame anyone or say, oh, poor me, or say, oh, terrible you, because all of this is just stuff we're evolving through. When we know better, we do better, and I think that's all we can expect of anybody. But suicide is not inevitable. Suicidal ideation can be healed. PTSD can be healed. Looping energies that are filtering our view and making us see everything we see through that lens can be healed. We can clear the lens, expand our awareness, and this is what we're doing as a society, evolving our consciousness. So it's not wrong that we've thought what we thought up until now. I started this by explaining some of the corruption on why this would have been held back and hidden. And I think for our logical minds, it's important to understand those things. It's important. So even though I don't want to give that power, because there is a solution, I want to put my energy towards the solution. Once we are all empowered, and once we are all running towards this solution, the old way just falls apart. Trust me, when we all get off medication because we've dealt with our own pain, the pharmaceutical companies are automatically going to collapse. It's not going to be something we require any longer. By all means, take medications you need. I'm not trying to replace the advice of a doctor or the knowledge and understanding of a doctor's point of view. Those are all very valid and important. But where we have the industry telling us that certain things cannot be healed, I'm telling you they can. They can, and I'm not the only one who knows it. There are a lot of people like me who know it. There may be just one in each family. You take your whole family and then there's just one. Because we've been spread out. It was by design. So we needed very strong, determined souls that would be isolated like this and that would rise up. And we also needed these souls who would allow themselves to suffer and let people see it. And let them shift and maybe even take some of their pain. And maybe even force them to deal with some of that pain when this person exited. So maybe they're becoming guides from the other side. We have to honor that our deceased loved ones live on. It's only this body, this vessel, which I would equate equate to like our spaceship, our ship that we're navigating this earth with. You know, that is the only thing that dies from this earth. We live on. We live on. And so our loved ones are lived on, even those that have suicided. And they're not judged or thought wrong or, you know, yes, it's true that they can be looping here in the ether. That's true. So you can still help them from, even though they have passed on. And, because everything is energy. And so if we do have a trauma that's unresolved, we will loop. So it may become actually important to help and release people who have passed. Acknowledge and validate. Acknowledge and validate. And I believe that from that side they wouldn't be judging, you know, like the messages that I get from my dad from that side are those like apologetic and like wanting the best for me, guiding me, watching me, protecting me, making sure that those friends that aren't good for me, that I've given a million chances to, just because I'm trained to be self-sacrificing, that they're taken out of my life, that I'm just given that extra kind of big picture view from having that loved one on the other side. So in actuality, you know, if you can get in touch with this part of yourself, you have access to your loved ones. So that's something to consider, and this may be, you know, a really difficult view to take in. I have a lot more to say about it. I'm not sure that I've said it as, you know, best that it could be said. I'm limited by words and concepts and ideas to express this to you. This doesn't express everything. This is just take what serves you and leave the rest. I'm not looking to argue or disempower anybody at all. This is only meant to empower people to understand that this, even that, it's not inevitable. We can heal. We got this. We got this, guys. We got this. The healing of something can spread just like the detriment of something. So spread it, know it, feel it, do it, experiment with it, get some help, try something different, know that there's a solution, and then allow it to come to you.